The correct verdict in the Menendez murder case should have been manslaughter and not murder. And the reason is you can't get around the elephant in the room that Eric and Lyle Menendez killed their parents. The defense put on more than 50 witnesses in the first trial, teachers, coaches, family, friends, that told a very detailed story about a family that was very dysfunctional and spinning out of control. Gil Garcetti was running for re-election as the DA of LA. So it looked very powerful to go on live TV all over Los Angeles and say, this is a case of murder, not manslaughter, and we're going to retry the case. And then came OJ. So the second Menendez trial began less than a week after OJ was acquitted. And that was a case of incredibly bad timing. And as a result, the brothers were really facing an uphill battle. I believe the defense did an excellent job in the first trial of presenting these 50 teachers, coaches, family, friends, relatives who took the stand and told pieces of a puzzle. This is a very complicated story. It's a very complicated case. And so the defense really, told the story in the first trial, and they convinced half the jurors to vote for manslaughter, which is a lesser form of murder. If the brothers had been convicted of manslaughter, they would have served 11 years on each count in California, so they would have been in jail for 22 years. And now they have been in jail for 34 years and 6 months. So in other words, they would have gotten out 12 years ago. There was an issue in the case with the brothers' therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, who Eric Menendez confessed to on Halloween 1989. And of course, you have a privilege normally with the therapist, but the therapist gossiped to his girlfriend. He was married to another therapist, but he gossiped with his girlfriend. And then he tried to keep the lid on her, and he and his wife moved her into their home for several months, trying to keep her from going to the police as his relationship was going sour with the girlfriend. That could be a book in themselves. Their whole story is wild. But the way the case was cracked was the girlfriend, Julian Smith, was kicked out of the Oziel's house. And she immediately went to the Beverly Hills Police and she said, Eric and Lyle Menendez killed their parents, and Dr. Jerry Oziel has audio tapes in a safe house box with their confession on it. Normally, you have a privilege with a therapist in California, like most places, where the therapist can't reveal anything that you say in a therapy session. But Dr. Oziel made up a story that the brothers had threatened him, which I don't believe. Oziel was the star witness for the prosecution in the first trial. And he claimed that Lyle Menendez had threatened him on the night that Eric confessed. And so for 3 years, that issue was really hardly fought by the DA's office and the defense. And the case went all the way to the California Supreme Court, which in the end ruled that the tape of the brothers talking was admissible in the trial because if the tape had not been admitted into the trial as evidence, the defense would have been, you say we did it, prove it. I personally feel, based on the evidence that I saw in court, which is very extensive and detailed evidence, that Eric and Lyle Menendez were in fear for their lives on the night they killed their parents. And it's very hard for us to believe. The number one question that people ask me is, they were 18 and 21 years old. They were nationally ranked tennis players. Why didn't they just walk out the front door? Why would they stay in that house? And the answer to that question is that Eric and Lyle were living in something like a tunnel, and they couldn't imagine walking out and carrying on with their lives. because their father had threatened them so many times that they believed that was true. And the number two question that people always ask me is, okay, maybe I'm willing to accept that Jose Menendez was a monster, that he was an abusive father, and there were eyewitnesses to physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. Pedophiles typically don't invite people in to watch when they're sexually molesting a kid. And so the answer to why did they kill their mother, there were a series of confrontations in the days before the killings. And Kitty Menendez told the brothers that actually she had known all along that they were being molested. And she said, "What, do you think I'm stupid?" Which is actually a line, a scene that they have in the Monsters TV series. I believe Eric and Lyle Menendez were, shocked when their mother told them that she had known for years that Jose Menendez was molesting his sons and that she had done nothing about it. So their anger with her was equally as strong as their anger with their father. I was the co-executive producer and co-creator of a documentary that came out on Peacock in May of 2023. And that documentary established the connection, a very odd connection, between Jose Menendez, who had been head of RCA Records, and the 1980s Latin boy band Menudo. And the primary character in our documentary, his name was Roy Rossello, and he went on camera and talked about that Jose Menendez raped him when he was 14 years old. And that was important because it was the first time ever that another victim of Jose Menendez had come forward. My reporting partner, Mary Ankland, and I believe that there are other members of Menudo that might come forward. It's such a shameful thing for a young man to come forward and talk about, being an abuse survivor. But the other key piece of new evidence is a letter that I found at the home of Eric Menendez's aunt, Marta Cano. And Marta had a son named Andy, who sadly passed away in 2003 from an accidental sleeping pill overdose. But in November of 1988, about 9 months before the killings, Eric wrote Andy a letter. And in this letter, he said that he was complaining that he was still being sexually molested by his father, and he didn't know what to do about it. And Eric and Andy were very close. And the way I discovered this letter was in March of 2018. I was wrapping up my first Menendez book, and I was on deadline. And I was visiting with Mrs. Cano at her house in West Palm Beach, Florida. And she let me go into Andy's room, and it hadn't been touched since he had died in 2003. And there was a dresser full of papers, and she said, "You're welcome to look through these papers, and see if there's anything that might be helpful for you or for the case." And within 15 minutes, I found this letter. And as soon as I saw the letter, I knew it was extremely important because it was a piece of physical evidence where Eric Menendez was writing the cousin he was very close to and complaining about the ongoing sexual abuse by his father. So those are the Menudo Menendez connection and the letter that Eric wrote to Andy Cano are the two key pieces of new evidence in their habeas petition to reopen their case. And normally in California, 99% of habeas petitions are turned down within a week. So it's very unusual that this petition is still active 16 months after it was filed. And there's a Superior Court judge who is involved, and he has asked the LA County DA's office to answer a series of questions that he sent over to them. And this judge could also hold live hearings with live witnesses in court to examine the evidence. But I think it looks hopeful, and the appellate lawyers have told me that they feel that everything is encouraging, that the habeas could be approved. And the purpose of a habeas petition is to ask for a new trial because of this new evidence. There will never be a new Menendez trial. It is 30 years later, and half of the witnesses that testified in 1993 are even dead or have dementia. And the cost to Los Angeles County would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million to reconstruct a 30-year-old trial. And what would be the point? So what the brothers are hoping for is that they will ask to be resentenced if their habeas petition is approved, and they will ask to be resentenced to time served, and they would be let out of prison.